haven, preserving the eternal annals of Warhammer.
The stars at the galaxy's rim burned like dying embers, their light stretched thin and red by the endless void. Once, this region had been called the Bastion Verge, a crown of fortresses holding back 1,000 unseen threats. Now, it resembled a graveyard of faith and ambition. Watch stations drifting dark, orbital rings cracked and spinning, Vox beacons whispering only static. Beneath that flickering canopy, a single cruiser moved without transponder, its hull sheathed in plates of void black that reflected nothing but absence. In its command sanctum, a figure stood alone, palms resting on a table of frozen star maps that still displayed the Imperium's banners, long after they had been torn down in reality. We have gathered here in the hush of these fading suns to tell a story of shadowed oaths and choices that cannot be undone. We truly care for you, listener, across whatever world or station you inhabit. This tale is meant for your quiet hours, a companion in your long vigil. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now let's get started. The cruiser's sanctum was dim, lit only by weak blue light from the map projectors. In their glow, the Alpha Legion's commander, known to most as Merkin Vey, but in truth, a man of a dozen false identities, looked less like a warlord and more like a ghost pulled out of history. His armor bore no heraldry. Each plate was polished to a seamless sheen, as if to erase any sign of individuality. Yet within, the man's heart beat heavy with a conflict no mask could suppress. He had orchestrated entire wars from behind veils of misinformation, turning brother against brother and planet against planet without ever stepping into the open. But this new proposition, the Whispered Alliance, felt like stepping off a ledge into a void deeper than the warp itself. A data slate glowed at his elbow, its runes pulsing like a dying pulse. It carried the signal he had waited weeks to decrypt, coordinates for a meeting far beyond Imperial patrol routes, offered by entities whose names had been erased from official archives millennia ago. They promised weapons capable of unmaking reality at a molecular level, void-bone spines that could pierce starship hulls, code songs that could cripple an entire sector's astropathic network. All they asked in return was information, and the Legion had always traded in that currency. But Vey's thoughts circled like carrion birds. What information exactly, and to what end? He raised his eyes to the star map. Tiny green icons marked Alpha Legion cells scattered across the sector, each one following a plan they believed they understood. In truth, only Vey knew how the pieces interlocked. Yet for all his mastery, the board now looked unfamiliar, chaotic even. He remembered the Primarch's voice, recorded long ago, speaking of flexibility, adaptation, and the virtue of never revealing the whole plan. But what happens when even the planner no longer sees the whole picture? The thought chilled him more than the sanctum's recycled air. Outside the sanctum, the ship's crew moved like wraiths, speaking in coded phrases and shifting assignments mid-stride. Even here, secrecy was a kind of gravity. It bent every action toward silence. Vey watched them through a narrow viewport. He had trained them to operate without faith or identity, to be weapons of pure intent. Yet he saw fatigue in their movements, the subtle slack of men and women who have begun to question whether their cause still exists. The Alpha Legion thrived on ambiguity, but ambiguity could rot into despair. He turned back to the slate and keyed in a sequence of runes. The message expanded, revealing not only coordinates, but a fragment of pick capture. A derelict station orbiting a black dwarf, its spires shaped like grasping fingers. He felt the image pull at him, a summons not just of opportunity, but of destiny. His gauntlet hovered over the confirmation rune. If he pressed it, the ship would change course within the hour. If he did not, the offer would vanish into encrypted myth, and the Legion would continue its slow bleed into irrelevance. The choice seemed simple in theory, yet his hand would not move. A voice crackled over the private vox, low and steady. "Lord Vey," said Operative Holtrin, one of his oldest agents, "we have completed the last diversion along the Mali's corridor. Enemy patrols are blind. We are clear to proceed wherever you order." There was a pause, then a quieter addition. "Do you believe these friends will honor their word?" Vey did not answer at once. He remembered Hultrin as a young recruit, eyes bright with the thrill of deception. Now those eyes were lined, the voice edged with doubt. The Legion could mimic loyalty, but could not escape time. "I believe," Vey said finally, "that every oath holds a hidden blade. Our task is to decide whether we can wield it before it cuts us." He cut the vox and stared once more at the derelict station's image. The fingers of its spires reminded him of the statues on Kamos, where he had once trained. Monuments to forgotten guardians who had failed to hold back the night. He wondered if future archaeologists would find his own plans the same way. Hollow symbols of an order that could not save itself. In the silence, the ship's engines thrummed like a distant heartbeat. Each vibration seemed to echo his inner conflict. He imagined the meeting ahead. Alien shapes cloaked in technology older than Terra's oceans, voices that spoke in harmonics no human larynx could form. He imagined himself standing across from them, offering secrets he had sworn to keep, justifying it as necessary for victory. Would his Primarch approve, or had the Legion already drifted too far from its founder's vision to ask such questions? A flicker of movement in the star map caught his eye, one of the green icons pulsing irregularly. A cell gone, dark. He magnified the sector and saw the faint outline of an Imperial Inquisition seal overlaying the coordinates. Even now, enemies closed in on the Legion's shadows. Time was thinning like the dying light of the Verge's stars. Choices delayed too long became choices made by default. He reached out and pressed the confirmation rune. The slate chimed softly, and the cruiser's course shifted, engines murmuring with new direction. Outside the viewport, the stars began to wheel, their red light bending into streaks. For a moment, Vey felt weightless, as if the ship and his soul had both slipped free of known trajectories. Yet the momentary relief gave way to a deeper heaviness. He had set events in motion that could either salvage the Legion or erase it from history. He wondered if there was truly any difference between those outcomes. Shadows lengthened across the sanctum's floor as the ship angled toward the black dwarf. He thought of Halton's question and whispered to the empty room, "Honor is a word for those who still believe." No one answered. Only the dying stars watched as the Alpha Legion's flagship vanished into the void, bearing its master toward a meeting with impossible allies and the echo of his own unspoken doubts. The sanctum lights dimmed further, leaving the star map a faint ghost across his armor. In its fading glow, Merkin Vey felt the first tremor of regret, small but persistent, like a crack forming in an unbreakable blade. The ship's course locked toward the black dwarf, its engines whispering like secret vows through the void. In the command sanctum, Merkin Vey stood unmoving, watching the streaking stars fade into emptiness. Behind his composed mask, doubts nested like silent predators. He had pressed the confirmation rune, set the meeting in motion, yet the weight of it pressed harder now, as if each moment of travel braided new threads of fate around his throat. Outside the armoured bulkheads, the galaxy rotated in slow grandeur. Dying suns, drift fleets of forgotten empires, signals from civilizations long extinct, reminders of how easily power becomes memory. In the Legion's labyrinthine corridors, coded orders filtered through the ranks. Operatives altered their disguises, repainted armor plates, changed insignia in ritual silence. They were experts at becoming other people, yet their eyes revealed the weariness of endless masks. In a narrow alcove near the strategium, Haltran waited for his commander, fingers brushing the hilt of a blade he never drew. When Vey emerged, Haltran straightened but did not salute. The Alpha Legion had long abandoned such gestures, replacing them with subtler signs. A glance, a shift of stance, a single whispered syllable. "My lord," Haltran said quietly, "the crew awaits your briefing. They will follow the plan as always, but they ask what this mission truly means." "What do you think it means?" Vey's voice was low, measured, as if words themselves might betray him. Haltran hesitated. "It feels like stepping into a mirror and hoping the reflection is friend, not foe." Vey allowed a thin smile. "Every reflection is both. That is why we endure." He moved past, beckoning Haltran to follow. Together they descended into the strategium, a chamber carved from the ship's heart, where walls displayed shifting hololiths of coded data rather than maps. Operatives assembled there in muted clusters, faces obscured by hoods or ritual paint. The air smelled faintly of machine oil and incense, an old Legion custom meant to mask human scent from Auspex arrays. Vey stepped onto the central dais. "Brothers and sisters," he began, his voice carrying just enough authority to slice through the chamber's hush. "You have followed me through campaigns the Imperium itself has never recorded. You have struck enemies who never knew you were there. Now we enter a different battlefield, one where our foe may speak as ally, where oaths are blades concealed in velvet. I cannot promise safety. I can promise only purpose." A murmur rippled through the assembly. One operative, a woman known only as Seric, raised her head. "Purpose, Lord, or survival?" she asked. Her eyes gleamed like polished obsidian. "We were trained to trade one for the other." "Sometimes," Vey replied softly, "we must gamble both." His gaze swept across them. Each operative had been chosen for a different talent: infiltration, sabotage, silent killing, manipulation of data streams. Each had built their identity on shifting ground. Yet here, now, he sensed their hunger for a clearer truth. He could not give it, and still maintain the Legion's way. After the briefing, as the operatives dispersed into the corridors like fragments of a shattered blade, Haltran lingered. "They will obey," he said, "but they want more than orders. They want belief." "Belief is a luxury," Vey answered. "If we grant it, we risk losing adaptability." Haltran's jaw tightened. "Then what holds us together, Lord?" Vey did not reply. He left the strategium and moved toward his private chamber, a small cell lined with relics no one else was permitted to see. Among them lay a data crystal encoded with his Primarch's earliest teachings. He activated it now, and a flickering projection of a tall armoured figure appeared, its voice distorted by time. "Never show them all your faces," it said. "Never bind them with a single truth." Vey had listened to this recording for decades, each time hearing a different meaning. Tonight it sounded like an elegy. The hours stretched as the ship approached the Black Dwarf. In the viewing ports the star grew large, a smouldering coal of collapsed mass haloed by faint relic radiation. Around it drifted debris, the bones of an ancient orbital network. Spires snapped like brittle reeds. Within that graveyard hid the meeting place, a station whose spires curled inward like clasping hands. Even at this distance Ve felt its presence, a silence deeper than vacuum. He summoned Haltran and Seric to his chamber. "You will accompany me aboard the station," he told them. "No others. The fewer who see, the fewer who can be compromised." Seric tilted her head. "And if compromise has already begun? Then we will learn it firsthand." His tone allowed no argument, though inwardly he admired her audacity. The Legion's strength had always been questioning, yet even questioning could cut too deep. They donned chameleon cloaks and sealed their armor. Each movement felt ritualistic, echoing campaigns long past, boarding actions in the Pale Reaches, infiltration of the Kadith secrecy, the endless shadow war of their making. Ve remembered those days with a strange nostalgia, when betrayal was a tactic rather than a mirror. Now it felt like staring into his own reflection, searching for the outline of a face. As they prepared to board the shuttle, Haltran spoke softly over a private channel. "I have served you 23 years without falter, but I must know, Lord, why these allies? We have outlasted countless foes without them." Ve's visor reflected the dying star. "Because our greatest foe is time. We are not immortal, Haltran. Even shadows fade if cast long enough." Haltran said nothing more. The shuttle's hatch closed, sealing them into a capsule of silence. They launched toward the station, its spires growing immense, blotting out the star's faint light. The hull bore no markings, but along its edges glimmered patterns not of human design, geometries that seemed to shift when stared at directly. Seric whispered a half-remembered litany to steady her mind. Ve simply watched, feeling the weight of his decision press inward like the station's curling towers. Docking clamps seized the shuttle with a soundless impact. As the hatch cycled open, a breath of stale metallic air greeted them. They stepped into a corridor lined with panels of void bone, their surfaces etched with runes that pulsed faintly, like veins carrying light. The silence was total, as if the station itself absorbed sound. A figure awaited them at the corridor's end, tall, cloaked, its outline shifting subtly, as though reality struggled to define it. When it spoke, the voice arrived in layered harmonics that made the human ear ache. "Welcome, children of secrecy," it said. "You carry the scent of dying empires." Ve inclined his head, but did not bow. "We carry many scents. You offered a meeting. We have come." The figure's cloak rippled. "Then step deeper and leave your names behind. They are of no use here." Ve glanced at Haltran and Seric. Both stood taut, hands near their weapons, but not drawing them. He felt a pulse of something. Fear, anticipation, recognition. This was the threshold he had chosen. Every decision until now had been a rehearsal. This was the true performance. They followed the figure into the station's heart. The corridor widened into a chamber of suspended platforms over a pit of glowing mist. Structures like petrified wings arched overhead, etched with constellations no imperial chart recorded. Around the edges of the platform hovered other shapes, glimpsed only peripherally, perhaps more emissaries, perhaps illusions. Ve could not tell. He stopped at the platform's center. "We are here," said. "Show us what friendship means in shadow." The harmonics deepened, resonating in his bones. Friendship the cloaked being murmured, is merely another mask. Let us see how long yours will hold. As the sound faded, Vey felt the last vestige of certainty slip from him. He had stepped into the mirror. Now the reflection would decide whether it was ally or foe. The chamber's mist rose in slow coils, diffusing the faint light into pale columns that gave no warmth. Merkin Vey stood at the platform's centre, helmeted head turning slightly as he tracked the cloaked being's movements. Behind him, Haltrin and Seric remained silent, their visors reflecting the shifting symbols etched into the petrified wings overhead. The mist smelled faintly of ozone and something older, a scent like dry stone under alien suns. Vey's hearts, one of flesh, one of implanted iron, beat with the same slow cadence, echoing the deep hum that pulsed through the chamber like a hidden engine. The cloaked emissary drifted closer, its outline refusing to settle. You stand where the verge of echo once ruled, it said in layered harmonics. Long before your Imperium, before your Legion's gene sire, this station was a listening post to 1,000 dying tongues. We preserved what they were, even as their stars went dark. Now you come, a shadow seeking shadows. We come as negotiators, Vey replied, his voice steady but inwardly tasting the bitter edge of awe. Your message promised weapons and knowledge. We are prepared to discuss terms. Terms are a fiction of the moment, the being murmured, but we enjoy fictions. It gestured with a limb that might have been a hand or a cluster of tendrils. A new platform glided from the mist, bearing objects shrouded in translucent veils. The veils trembled as though stirred by unseen currents, revealing glimpses of void-bone spines, crystalline spheres pulsing with inner light, and shards of black metal etched with crawling runes. Haltrin shifted uneasily. This is sorcery, he whispered on a private channel. It is technology, Vey whispered back. But technology so old it has worn the mask of sorcery. His gaze returned to the emissary. These are impressive. What do you ask in return? The harmonics deepened, vibrating the air. We ask for what you already collect, it said. Knowledge. Code songs of your Imperium's hidden arteries. Names of watchers, routes of forgotten fleets, protocols of silence. We ask for the pattern behind your masks. Vey's jaw tightened within his helmet. You would have us betray the very structure we infiltrate. You already betray it, the being replied, not unkindly. Your existence is betrayal. We simply offer you a mirror. Seric stepped forward, her voice cutting through the harmonics. And if we refuse, the mist swirled around the emissary's cloak. Then your legion will continue to fade, cell by cell, operation by operation, until even your name is a ghost we archive among others. Refuse, and you will be forgotten. Accept, and you may yet shape forgetting into power. Vey silenced Seric with a small motion. He looked at the array of artifacts, each one radiating potential. He imagined them deployed across battlefields, turning victories from shadow into thunder. Yet he also imagined the price. The Imperium's arteries exposed, perhaps to enemies even darker than these beings. He thought of his Primarch's teaching, the mantra of adaptation. But adaptation had a cost, and he felt it now like a blade pressing at his spine. The emissary's voice softened, almost intimate. We have watched your legion for centuries, it said. You are not like your brothers. You do not crave worship or destruction. You crave relevance, purpose. You crave to matter in a galaxy that forgets. We can grant that. For a moment Vey felt seen, as if the being had reached through every mask and touched the doubt beneath. He resisted the impulse to look at Haltrin and Seric. He could not let them see that flicker of temptation. "You speak as though you know me," he said instead. "We know your echoes," the being replied, "and echoes are often truer than the voice." A second platform emerged from the mist, this one carrying a single object, a small sphere of translucent material within which swirled a miniature starfield. The emissary extended a limb toward it. "A token," it said, "a demonstration. Feed this into your ship's astropathic choir. You will see how easily we can blind an entire sector's eyes." Vey reached out, but did not touch the sphere. "And what will it cost me?" "Only a name," the being said. "One name. A name only you know." He felt Haltrin's sharp intake of breath through the vox. Seric's hand twitched near her holster. Vey's mind raced. The demand was both trivial and enormous. A single name could unravel a web of operations, or reveal nothing but misdirection. Yet the principle of it, the act of giving up any secret to an unknown power, scraped against everything he had built. He withdrew his hand. "Not yet," he said. The emissary tilted its shifting head. "Not yet," it echoed. "We are patient. Shadows are patient. But even shadows fade." Haltrin spoke aloud now, his voice hard. "You promised weapons. Show us your good faith before we offer anything." The harmonics wavered, like a chord struck slightly off key. "Very well," it said. "We will show you a fragment of what friendship means." It gestured again, and one of the veiled artifacts lifted from its platform, floating toward Vey. The veil dissolved, revealing a dagger of void bone whose edge glimmered with starlight. "This is a key," the emissary said. "Insert it into the heart of an enemy vessel, and it will unravel the ship's reality. A gift. Use it, and you will understand." Vey accepted the dagger carefully, feeling a faint tremor run through his gauntlet. It was lighter than air, yet heavy with implication. He turned it once, seeing reflections of his own visor ripple across its edge. For a heartbeat, he wondered whether the reflection smiled. "We will consider your offer," he said at last. "Of course," the emissary murmured. "Consideration is the first stage of surrender." The mist thickened, signaling the end of the audience. Platforms drifted back into shadow, the veiled artifacts receding. Vey gestured to Haltrin and Seric, and they withdrew to the corridor, the emissary's harmonics following them like a low tide. As the station's docking clamps released the shuttle, Vey looked back once and saw the cloaked figure still watching, its outline now perfectly still, as if it had taken root in the mist. On the return flight, silence held for a long time. Finally, Seric spoke. "This is a trap," she said flatly. "All alliances are traps," Vey replied. "We choose which ones we spring." Haltrin's voice was quieter, tinged with something like sorrow. "You look tempted, Lord." Vey stared at the dagger in his lap. "Temptation is information," he said. "Nothing more." Yet inside he felt the whisper of another truth. Temptation is also trajectory. The shuttle redocked with the cruiser. As they disembarked, coded messages streamed across Vey's visor. Reports from distant cells, updates on false wars, hints of inquisitorial pursuit. The galaxy moved on, indifferent, but the dagger's presence seemed to warp even the ship's air, as though the first thread of some larger web had already ensnared them. In his private chamber, Vey placed the dagger on the star map table. Its edge glowed faintly, casting distorted constellations across the maps. He imagined inserting it into an enemy vessel, watching reality unravel. He imagined inserting it into his own ship, ending all questions. He closed his eyes, hearing the emissary's words echo. "We simply offer you a mirror." Outside the viewport, the black dwarf shrank behind them, a fading coal in the void. Ahead lay uncharted darkness, and within it choices that would not remain hypothetical for long. Vey felt both hunter and prey, mask and face, shadow and echo. He whispered to the dagger, though no one could hear, "What name would you take from me?" No answer came, only the soft thrum of engines and the slow turning of stars, each one a reminder of empires risen and fallen, of alliances made and broken. In that thrum, Merkan Vey sensed the opening beat of a long and terrible symphony he himself had called forth. The dagger lay on the star map table like a splinter of frozen night, its faint glow tracing fractured constellations across the holographic sectors. Merkan Vey stood over it in silence, palms braced against the cold edge of the console. Reports scrolled past his visor. Cells repositioning, false signals deployed, Imperial patrols chasing ghosts. All of it felt suddenly thin, a tapestry fraying in his hands. He had returned from the station with a weapon and a promise, but the promise tasted like ash, and the weapon pulsed like a heartbeat not his own. In the corridors outside, the ship's crew moved with muted urgency. Haltran had ordered security sweeps, sealing off unused compartments, as though the emissary's mist had seeped aboard with them. Seric kept to herself, running tests on the dagger's residue and cross-referencing it against every known Xenus database. Vey sensed the tremor of distrust growing among them, a quiet vibration under every word. The Legion was built to thrive on ambiguity, yet he knew that too much ambiguity could dissolve even steel into dust. He activated a private holofeed. The Primarch's flickering image appeared again, voice eroded by time. "Never reveal the whole plan," it whispered, "even to yourself." Vey watched the figure fade, wondering whether that had ever been wisdom or only a convenient excuse. The dagger's glow deepened, casting light across his armor like an inverted halo. Haltran entered without ceremony, visor retracted to show his lined face. "Lord," he said, "the dagger's energy signature is destabilizing our sensor arrays. And the crew, they whisper of curses. Some want it jettisoned." "Some always want to throw away what they don't understand," Vey replied. He turned the dagger slowly between his fingers. "Understanding comes later." Haltran's gaze sharpened. "And what if later is too late?" Vey looked up, meeting his operative's eyes. "Then we will adapt." Haltran exhaled through his teeth, a sound of restrained frustration. "We are approaching the cathedral station, as you ordered, but the crew still doesn't know why. I don't know why." "The cathedral was once a listening post for this sector," Vey said. "Buried beneath its reliquaries is a vault of Imperial data older than most of our operatives. The emissary wants code songs. We will not give them ours. We will give them this." He tapped a rune, and a hololithic map of the cathedral's sublevels bloomed above the dagger. A labyrinth of dead echoes. They will think it treasure. They will not realize it is a snare. Haltran's expression did not ease. "And if they do, then we learn their limits before they learn ours." Hours later, the cruiser slipped into the orbit of the cathedral station, a colossal structure of scorched iron and fractured spires encircling a black dwarf like a crown of broken teeth. Pilgrims once came here to listen to the echoes of the Emperor's voice, carried by gravitational tides. Now only silence reigned. As Vey watched from the viewport, flares of decaying energy arced between the spires, like veins flashing with ghostlight. Seric joined them on the bridge, helmet under her arm. "Atmosphere is thin but breathable. Power signatures minimal. It is as you described, Lord. Vey nodded. Prepare the vault. They descended in a small shuttle, just the three of them. The cathedral's docking bay was a cavern of shadows, its floor littered with broken icons. Faded murals depicted saints with erased faces, hands raised not in blessing, but in surrender. Their footsteps echoed as they crossed the bay, each sound swallowed almost immediately by the station's strange acoustics. Even Holtron, who had walked through 1,000 silent halls, felt the weight of this one pressing in. Vey led them through corridors lined with reliquaries. Bone fragments floated in stasis fields, their inscriptions worn away. Brass censers swung gently without wind. Symbols of collapsing faith, he thought, an appropriate stage for the play he was about to enact. Ahead, a massive door sealed with hexagonal locks blocked their path. Vey keyed in a code. The locks dissolved into motes of light, revealing a stairwell spiraling down into darkness. At the stairwell's base lay the vault, a circular chamber filled with stacks of ancient data slates, each one etched with runes older than the heresy. Vey had discovered it years before and sealed it away, a cache of obsolete intelligence too dangerous to destroy, too useless to wield. Now it would serve as bait. Seric moved among the stacks, scanning with her auspex. No active defenses, she reported, but the energy signature is strange, like echoes of echoes. Exactly, Vey said. A perfect labyrinth for our friends. He placed the void-bone dagger atop a pedestal at the chamber's center, letting its glow spill across the slates. When they arrive, he murmured, they will see what they wish to see. A vault of secrets ready for harvest. We will watch, we will learn. Haltron frowned. And if they decide to take us instead? Vey straightened, the glow painting his visor like a mask of fire. Then we will decide what loyalty means. They withdrew to an observation niche carved into the vault's outer wall, hidden behind a panel of cracked marble. From here, Vey had a clear view of the chamber through narrow slits. He activated a coded beacon, a signal only the emissary's network would detect. Then they waited. Time stretched. Dust drifted in pale beams. Vey's mind replayed the emissary's words. We simply offer you a mirror. He wondered if this snare was truly his, or if he was stepping into theirs. He imagined the mirror cracking, shards flying outward, each shard a cell of his legion lost to the void. At last, the air shuddered. A ripple passed through the chamber as though the station had taken a breath. Mist leaked from the floor seams, coiling around the stacks of data slates. Shadows moved within it, outlines that refused to resolve. The emissary stepped forth, cloak shifting like liquid darkness. Behind it came two more shapes, smaller but no less unsettling. Their harmonics vibrated the vault like a muted chord. You honor our patience, the emissary said. Show us the pattern. Vey's voice carried from the shadows. The pattern is before you. Take what you came for. The emissary drifted toward the pedestal, tendrils reaching for the dagger. It paused, harmonics fluttering. A key, it murmured. And a maze. You offer us both. Knowledge and tools, Vey said. As promised. Mist thickened, the two smaller beings spread out, scanning the stacks with gestures that left trails of light. Haltron's fingers tightened on his weapon. Seric's eyes flicked between the shapes, reading invisible currents. Vey remained still, every muscle poised. The emissary touched the dagger. A pulse of light ran through the chamber, briefly illuminating the hidden niche. For an instant, Vey felt the being's gaze sweep across him like a searchlight, though its head did not turn. Mirrors within mirrors, it said softly. We see you. Vey stepped from the niche, abandoning pretense. "Then see this as well," he said. He triggered a sequence on his wrist console. The vault's stasis fields collapsed, flooding the chamber with overlapping signals designed to scramble sensory input. The data slates erupted with false code songs, a cacophony of information noise. The emissary's harmonic spiked, the smaller beings recoiling. "A trap," it hissed. "You teach us distrust." "Consider it a lesson," Vey said. Mist surged, obscuring everything. In the swirl, Vey glimpsed the emissary's cloak unfolding like wings, runes flaring along its edges. Power built, rattling the chamber's walls. Holtron raised his weapon. Seric whispered a curse. Vey felt the dagger's echo vibrate through the floor, a low hum like anticipation. For a heartbeat, time held. Shadows within shadows, choices within choices. Then the emissary's voice dropped to a whisper that carried through the storm. "All masts break, Merkin Vey, even yours." The mist imploded, leaving the vault empty. The dagger lay where it had been, but its glow had deepened to a dark, waiting red. Vey stared at it, hearing the echo of the emissary's last words. Around him the chamber felt heavier, as if the station itself had tilted closer to some unseen abyss. He realized the snare had sprung, but he could not yet tell on whom. The vault felt like a wound left open after surgery, silent, pulsing faintly, air thick with residual harmonics. Merkin Vey stood where the mist had collapsed, the dagger still glowing on its pedestal. Its new hue was not the cold starlight from before, but a dark red as if it had drawn in the breath of the emissary, and now held it prisoner. Around him, fallen data slates flickered with scrambled runes, the false code song still spilling like static whispers. He wondered whether the emissary had taken anything, or had left something behind. Haltron paced at the edge of the chamber, weapon still in hand, eyes scanning every corner as if expecting the mist to reappear. "They were never really here," he muttered over a private channel. "Only projections or worse, echoes." "They were here," Vey said quietly. "Presence is not limited to flesh." He lifted the dagger and felt its vibration tremble through his gauntlet, and they left a mark. Seric crouched near a fallen stack, running a hand scanner over the slates. "Energy signature persists," she reported, "but it's shifted. Something's echoing outside the measurable bands." "Can you trace it?" Vey asked. "No," she said, shaking her head. "It's like trying to follow a reflection in boiling water." Vey straightened. "Then we leave before the water boils over." They ascended the stairwell in silence, each footstep ringing like a countdown. In the reliquary corridors, the erased saints seemed to lean closer, their blank faces stretched in silent warning. When they reached the docking bay, the shuttle waited where they had left it, but the air smelled faintly of ozone and something sour, as if a storm had passed through and taken the memory of lightning with it. Haltron sealed the hatch behind them. "We have the dagger. We have our lives. We should consider that a victory." Vey settled into the pilot's chair. "Victory is a mask. We'll know what it hides soon enough." During the ascent back to the cruiser, no one spoke. Seric busied herself running new scans. Haltron stared at the dagger's glow, lips pressed thin. Vey guided the shuttle out of the cathedral's orbit, watching the broken spires shrink behind them until they looked like a crown of teeth lost in the dark. His thoughts turned inward. The emissary had walked straight into his snare, yet he felt snared himself, caught by a web he could not see. The last word still echoed, "All masks break." When they docked with the cruiser, the ship felt subtly altered. Lights flickered in unfamiliar patterns, Air recyclers hissed with uneven rhythm. Crew members moved more quietly than before, glancing at one another as though unsure who was who. Vey saw suspicion blooming like mold in a sealed compartment. Secrets were supposed to be the Legion's strength. Now they threatened to become its infection. He summoned Holtron and Seric to the Strategium. The chamber's hololiths were dim, showing only ghost outlines of sectors. Vey set the dagger on the dais. Its glow pulsed, and the hololiths flickered, momentarily revealing constellations that did not exist. "We learned something in the vault," he said. "We tested their patience, their power, their desire. Now we test ourselves." Haltron's voice was rough. "With what, Lord? Half the crew already believes we're cursed. The other half suspects you've made a deal they weren't told about." "They're right to suspect," Vey said. "Suspicion keeps them alive. But we will not act blindly. Seric, what did your scans reveal?" She hesitated, eyes flicking to the dagger. "The artifact resonates with our ship's systems. It's not only a weapon, it's a listener. It's mapping us." Haltron swore softly. "Then we've brought a spy aboard." "We've brought a mirror aboard," they corrected. "And mirrors can be turned." He turned to a console and keyed in a sequence, activating an isolated chamber deep in the cruiser's lower decks. "We'll confine it," he said. "Let it think it's watching us while we watch it. Meanwhile, we prepare for the next move." Holtron frowned. "Next move? We're still recovering from the last one." "Shadows don't recover," Vey said. "They shift." The isolated chamber was a former astropathic choir room, its walls layered with null weave to dampen psychic bleed. Vey personally carried the dagger there, flanked by Holtron and Seric. The walk through the ship's corridors felt like passing through a labyrinth built by someone else. Crew members bowed their heads but did not speak. Vey sensed their eyes following him after he passed, as though they were memorizing a path for later. In the chamber, he placed the dagger on a pedestal marked with the Legion's Hydra sigil. The glow dimmed, then flared once, like an eye opening. Null-weave dampeners hummed to life. Seric monitored the readings, frowning. "It's adapting," she said, "learning the dampener's frequency." "Good," Vey murmured. "Let it learn. We'll feed it what we choose." Holtron stepped closer, his voice low. "And if it feeds us something instead?" "Then we adapt," Vey repeated. But he felt the words becoming ritual rather than conviction. They left the chamber sealed and returned to the Strategium. Outside the viewport, the black dwarf had vanished into distance. Ahead lay the uncharted void. Vey called up a map of the sector, lines of false operations overlaying real ones. For years he had controlled this web with the precision of a puppeteer. Now the threads tangled in ways he could not quite follow. He replayed the emissary's voice in his mind. "You crave relevance. You crave to matter in a galaxy that forgets." Was that his true motive? Not survival, not victory, but a plea against erasure. He had always told himself that secrecy was a weapon, that anonymity was freedom. Yet perhaps it had only been fear. Fear of becoming one more forgotten echo among the dying stars. Seric interrupted his thoughts. "Lord, I've detected a signal." He turned. "From the dagger?" "No. From within our own systems. A transmission looping through our lower decks. It's in a code we've never used." Haltron's hand went to his weapon out of habit. "A leak." "A seed," Vey said quietly. "Planted before we even returned." He felt the moment stretch, like the stillness before a blade falls. Every plan he had built assumed control of the narrative, but this new signal suggested a story being written without him. He thought of the dagger glowing in the null-weave chamber, mapping their ship perhaps whispering to its unseen masters. He thought of his legion's cells scattered across the stars, each believing they followed his design. He wondered how many already heard the same signal. Haltran looked at him. "What are your orders, Lord?" Vey stared at the map until the lines blurred. "We follow the signal," he said finally. "We see where it leads. And if it leads into another trap, then we learn what kind of trap we are." He dismissed them, remaining alone in the strategium. Outside, the void stretched endless and indifferent. He imagined the emissary's cloak unfolding again, wings etched with constellations no imperial chart recorded. He imagined himself etched there too, just another point of light fading in some alien pattern. The dagger's echo pulsed through the ship's deck, faint but steady. He placed his hands flat against the console and whispered to no one. "Masks within masks. How many faces until I find my own?" The hololith answered only with ghost sectors and static stars, each one a reminder that even secrets can be swallowed by silence. In that silence, Merkin Vey felt the legion shifting beneath him, like a tide he had summoned but could no longer command. The next move awaited, and with it the question of whether adaptation was survival or surrender. The signal threaded through the cruiser like a whispered rumour, slipping from deck to deck without origin or end. Merkin Vey felt it before he heard it, a low pulse under the ship's normal vibrations, as if the hull itself had begun to breathe. In the strategium's dim glow, the map of the sector flickered, sectors dissolving into new constellations shaped like unknown runes. He traced one with a gauntleted finger and thought it looked like a coiled serpent biting its own tail. Haltran entered, his face drawn tight. "The crew is restless," he said. "They sense something moving through the systems. Some think the dagger is alive. Others think you've made a bargain they were not meant to survive." "Let them think," Vey replied. "Thinking is better than panic." "They're close to panic," Haltran warned. "They whisper that we've brought a warp spirit aboard." Vey's eyes flicked to the hololith. "Spirits are stories. Stories can be edited." He summoned Seric over the Vox. Moments later she appeared, helm under her arm, Auspex cradled like a fragile relic. "I traced the signal," she reported. "It leads to the lower decks, near the null-weave chamber. But it also leads outward, piggybacking on our own coded transmissions. Every message we send now carries a ghost." "A ghost to where?" Vey asked. She shook her head. "Coordinates shift each time I calculate them. It's like chasing a reflection." Haltran crossed his arms. "Then we stop transmitting, seal the ship." "That would tell our friends we're afraid," Vey said. "And fear is a signature." He stood, cloak whispering against his armour. "We go to the source." The three descended through the cruiser's spine, past compartments where crew whispered and avoided their gaze. The deeper they went, the stranger the ship felt. Air warmer, lights dimmer, echoes lingering longer than sound. Vey wondered whether the dagger's influence extended beyond data, whether it had begun to shape the crew's perceptions, rewriting the ship as it rewrote its codes. At the null-weave chamber's door, Seric paused, scanning. "Energy signatures changed again," she murmured. "Null field fluctuating." Haltran unslung his weapon. "Feels like walking into an ambush." "All alliances are ambushes," Vey said, echoing his own words from the shuttle. He keyed the door. The chamber lay bathed in dim red glow from the dagger on its pedestal. Its once stable pulse now flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows across the Hydra sigil on the floor. Runes crawled along the walls like insects. Vey felt a tremor run through his boots as if the deck plates themselves flexed. Seric raised her auspex. "It's broadcasting," she whispered. "Not just mapping, commanding." "Commanding what?" Haltran asked. "Us," she said. "Our systems. Maybe more." Vey stepped closer to the dagger, feeling its hum resonate with his own heart. "Stop the broadcast," he ordered. Seric hesitated. "I'm not sure I can without—" "Do it," Vey said. She keyed a sequence. The null-weave dampeners screamed as their frequencies collided with the artifact's pulse. The chamber's light dimmed, then flared blindingly. A wave of harmonics slammed into them, knocking Haltran back a step. Vey held his ground, teeth clenched, visor polarizing against the glare. Voices whispered at the edge of hearing, layered, familiar, impossible. Snatches of Legion code, old operations, even his own orders spoken in different tones. It was as though the dagger had inhaled every secret he had ever sent, and now exhaled them back in chorus. "Enough," Vey growled. He reached for the dagger. Haltran grabbed his arm. "Lord, don't—" Vey shook him off and closed his gauntlet around the artifact. Its surface felt soft and hard at once, like bone heated by a living pulse. For a heartbeat, he saw images behind his eyelids. The emissary's cloak unfolding, constellations etched on wings. Haltran's face younger, unlined by doubt. Seric standing at a crossroad, with a weapon he had not yet seen. He opened his eyes and ripped the dagger from the pedestal. The harmonics cut off. Silence slammed into the chamber like a physical force. Runes froze, then dimmed. Seric's auspex stuttered and went dark. Haltran exhaled slowly, weapon still raised. Vey stared at the dagger in his hand. Its glow had returned to faint starlight, but now a hairline crack ran along its edge. He felt a strange relief, as if something had blinked. Seric spoke first. "You stopped it, or interrupted it." Vey turned the dagger, watching the crack catch the light. "Interrupted, not stopped. The signal will seek another path. We need to know which." Haltran lowered his weapon. "What if the path is one of ourselves?" Vey met his eyes. "Then we see which mask breaks first." Back in the Strategium, they initiated silent protocols, cutting external transmissions without appearing to. Vey stood before the hololith, dagger sheathed at his side. Lines of force operations flickered, then resolved into a new pattern, one he had not programmed. It formed a spiral converging on a point near the edge of the sector, a dead system no one had used in centuries. Seric pointed. "There, it's guiding us." "Or luring us," Haltran said. "All lures are guides," Vey murmured. "The difference is when you cut the line." He studied the coordinates. The dead system had once been a staging ground for covert Legion operations during the Great Crusade, a place of caches and fallback plans long abandoned. If the emissary's influence had reached that far, it meant the mirror extended into the past, reflecting operations he himself had forgotten. He wondered if the being had chosen it deliberately, or if some deeper resonance had drawn them both. He turned to his operatives. "We go there, quietly." Haltran's mouth tightened. "You're walking into its hands." "I'm walking into my own shadow," Vey said. "If I don't, it will walk into me." Preparation began at once. The cruiser shifted course, engines muted, transponder codes altered to mimic a merchant scow. Vey walked among the crew as they worked, feeling their eyes on him. Some bowed heads. Others did not. He sensed their faith unraveling like thread pulled from a seam. He told himself it didn't matter. The Legion was not built on faith. But in the quiet between orders, he felt the emptiness where belief had once lived. In his private chamber, He set the cracked dagger on the table and activated the Primarch's recording one more time. The flickering figure spoke. "Never show them all your faces." Vey stared at it and whispered, "What if I have no faces left?" The recording offered no answer. Outside the viewport, the stars wheeled slowly, drawing them toward the dead system. Each one looked to Vey like an eye closing. Haltran entered quietly. "Course set," he said. "Crew briefed on a cover story. They'll follow orders, but they're afraid." "Good," Vey said. "Fear is clarity." Haltran lingered. "Lord, whatever waits out. There, promise me one thing. If it's stronger than us, we cut the line." Vey met his gaze. "We always cut the line," he said. But inside he wondered if the line had already looped around his throat. When Haltran left, Vey remained alone with the dagger. He traced the crack with a fingertip, feeling a faint pulse still beneath it. It reminded him of a serpent shedding skin, not dead but transforming. He thought of the emissary's words. Mirrors within mirrors. He imagined the coming encounter, a meeting not between enemies or allies but between reflections. He whispered to the empty room, "All masks break, but sometimes what's behind the mask is another mask." The ship's engines thrummed, carrying them into the dark. In that sound, Vey felt the tension of a bowstring drawn and waiting, the arrow already aimed but unseen. Ahead lay the dead system, the spiral's heart, and perhaps the moment when hunter and hunted would exchange places. He closed his eyes and listened to the thrum until it became a single wordless note, neither promise nor warning but something older, deeper, the sound of a shadow preparing to meet its own echo. The dead system emerged from the void like a scar in the fabric of space. No sun burned at its center, only a collapsed remnant whose pale corona flickered weakly, casting light like ash over 6 shattered worlds. Debris rings spiraled between them, remnants of fortresses once built to guard nothing and everything. As the cruiser glided into the system on muted engines, Merkan Vey stood at the bridge's viewport and felt the weight of old ghosts press against his armor. This had been one of their earliest staging grounds during the Great Crusade, a place where the Legion had practiced secrecy before secrecy became identity. To return here now was like walking into a childhood memory soured by time. Haltran reported from the sensor pit, voice subdued. No active signals, no heat signatures, only echo patterns. They're everywhere, like reflections of reflections. "Of course," Vey murmured. "This is where our shadows learn to multiply." Seric entered, holding her auspex close. "The signal converges on the third planet's ruins," she said. "A vault beneath the surface. It's transmitting a spiral of coordinates, like a path inward." "A path or a snare," Haltran muttered. "All snares are paths," Vey said. "The difference is whether you cut them before they tighten." He keyed a sequence on the console. "Prepare the infiltration team. No more than 3. Haltran turned sharply. 3? After what happened at the cathedral? 3, Vey repeated. "Any more will only feed the mirror." Seric glanced between them, but said nothing. She had seen the same shift Haltran had. The commander growing quieter, less like a strategist weaving webs, more like a man following an invisible thread. Yet she followed anyway. That was the Legion's creed. Doubt, but act. The shuttle descended through a broken atmosphere that clawed at its hull like rusted nails. Below stretched a world of grey plains and cracked citadels, towers fallen like spears driven into mud. As they approached the coordinates, an old Legion sigil flickered faintly on a half-buried spire. The Hydra, worn smooth by centuries, Vey felt a strange pang, like recognizing his own handwriting on a letter he did not remember writing. They landed near a collapsed transport bay. The air smelled of iron dust and something acrid, a scent of long-dried blood. Wind hissed through broken arches, carrying whispers too faint to pass. Vey led them through the ruins, stepping over fallen mosaics depicting operations whose code names had been lost. Each fragment felt like a shard of his own memory scattered by time. Seric scanned ahead. "The vault is beneath this structure," she said. "Sealed by our own codes, but twisted. Someone's been rewriting them." "Someone," Haltran repeated. "Or something." They descended into a stairwell choked with debris, their armor's servos grinding softly as they moved stones aside. The deeper they went, the less the ruins resembled human construction. Walls curved subtly, inscriptions shifting when viewed from the corner of an eye. Vey felt the dagger at his side vibrate faintly, like a compass pointing inward. At the stairwell's end, they emerged into a chamber vast and circular, lined with alcoves where statues once stood. Now only empty plinths remained, shadows pooling where faces had been. In the center, a dais rose, etched with a spiral of runes identical to those on the hololith back aboard the cruiser. Above the dais hovered a sphere of translucent material, swirling with miniature constellations, the twin of the one the emissary had offered as a token. Seric's auspex went wild. "Energy signature off the scale," she whispered. "It's like the dagger's pulse, but older." Vey stepped forward, boots echoing on the stone. "Older," he said softly. "Or deeper." Haltran circled to the opposite side, weapon ready. "This is a trap, Lord. We should destroy it and leave." Vey ignored him. The sphere pulsed slowly, constellations rearranging themselves into shapes that looked almost like faces, then masks, then faces again. He thought he heard a whisper, his own voice layered with others. "We offered you a mirror." He drew the dagger. Its crack glowed faintly, answering the sphere's pulse. For a moment, he imagined plunging it into the sphere, ending the signal, shattering the spiral. But something held his hand. A thought, or perhaps the weight of every choice he had made to reach this point. "Masks within masks," he murmured. Seric moved closer. "Lord, whatever this is, it's trying to interface with you." "I know," he said. "Then don't let it," she said. "Not without a plan." He almost smiled. "The plan is the mask." Haltran's voice rose, edged, with anger. "Enough riddles. Either we end this or it ends us." Vey turned his head slightly. "If it ends us, then at least we learn what we are." He placed the dagger's tip near the sphere. The chamber's light dimmed. Shadows lengthened like reaching hands. The runes on the dais flared, spiraling outward in a wave that passed through their armor and into their bones. Vey felt memories flicker. Operations lost, faces erased, oaths spoken and broken. He saw Haltran as a young recruit, Seric at her initiation, his own first mask fitted over a boy's uncertain face. He heard the Primarch's voice, not as a recording, but as presence. "Never show them all your faces." The sphere's whisper merged with the Primarch's. "Show us yours." For an instant, Vey saw himself reflected in the sphere. Helmetless, eyes tired, mouth set in a line between defiance and confession. He wondered if this was what the emissary wanted. Not codes, not weapons, but him. A living pattern of secrecy to archive, a mirror to complete their own. He drew back slightly. "Not yet," he whispered. The sphere pulsed faster. The dagger vibrated in his grip, the crack widening like a mouth. Haltran raised his weapon. "Lord..." "Wait," Vey said sharply. Seric's auspex shrieked. Energy spike. The sphere erupted in a flare of light, not explosion but unveiling. For a heartbeat, the chamber became a sky of alien constellations, each star a memory of betrayal. Vey felt them pass through him, not burning but erasing, like fingers wiping dust from glass. When the light faded, the sphere hung dim and still. Its constellations collapsed into a single point. Vey staggered back, breathing hard. The dagger's glow had gone out entirely, leaving only the crack like a scar. He felt emptier, lighter, uncertain which memories were his. Haltran lowered his weapon slowly, eyes wide. "What did it do?" he asked. Vey straightened, though his voice was rough. "It looked." Seric knelt by the dais, scanning the sphere. "It's inert now, but there's something in our systems. A seed." Vey sheathed the dagger. "Of course. Mirrors plant mirrors." He turned toward the stairwell. "We're done here." Haltran hesitated. "Done? With what?" "With pretending this was only an alliance," Vey said. "It's a reckoning." They ascended without speaking. The stairwell felt narrower, the walls closer. Vey's mind replayed the vision of himself reflected in the sphere. He wondered if the seed now pulsed in the cruiser, rewriting his cells as it rewrote his ship. He wondered if adaptation had crossed into surrender. At the surface, the wind had died. Dust hung in still air, drifting like ashes over the ruins. The shuttle waited, silent. Vey paused at the hatch, looking once more at the half-buried Hydra sigil. It seemed to him that one of the serpent heads had been chipped away, leaving the others coiling around emptiness. Inside the shuttle, Haltran strapped, in without a word. Seric sat opposite, eyes on her auspex, though it displayed only static. Vey took the pilot seat, hands resting lightly on the controls. As they lifted off, the ruins receded into grey haze, then vanished altogether. Ahead lay the void, and within it the legion's scattered cells, perhaps already touched by the same seed. Vey felt the weight of command settle heavier than ever. He had come seeking weapons and knowledge. He was leaving with a mirror cracked but still reflecting. He wondered how many more layers lay beneath. He whispered to himself as the stars slid past the viewport, masks within masks, and somewhere, a face. No one answered. Only the shuttle's engines thrummed, carrying them back to a ship that might no longer be theirs. The cruiser loomed ahead like a shadow given shape, its void-black hull glinting faintly under the dead system's ashlight. As the shuttle docked, Vey felt a tremor ripple through his palms on the controls, a subtle vibration as if the ship itself were exhaling after a long breath. The airlock cycled open with a hiss that sounded almost like a whisper. He stepped through first, Haltran and Seric behind him, and immediately sensed that something had changed. The corridor lights flickered in synchronized pulses, dim then bright, dim then bright, like the beat of a heart not their own. Crew members lined the passageway, silent and rigid, eyes tracking their commander as though measuring an unfamiliar shape. Some bore faint traceries of light under their skin, a pattern like thin constellations crawling just beneath the surface. Seric's auspex chirped nervously. "Energy signature throughout the decks," she whispered. "Not lethal, not yet, but it's everywhere." Haltran's hand hovered near his weapon. "It's the seed," he said. "Whatever that sphere did, it's here now." Vey moved forward without slowing. "And so are we," he said. "We find the root before it blooms." They reached the strategium. The hololith flickered, showing not maps, but spirals of shifting runes, each coiling inward toward a center that dissolved when focused upon. Vey approached it slowly. It's rewriting our command interface, Seric murmured, scanning. Integrating our data webs into a single pattern. A mirror made of code, Haltran muttered, and we're standing inside it. Vey touched a control rune. The hololith brightened, runes aligning into a shape he recognized. The Hydra sigil, but twisted, one head missing, the others coiled around emptiness. He thought of the half-buried symbol on the planet's surface and felt a chill. It's building an echo of us, he said softly. He turned to his operatives. We can't purge it without destroying the ship. We can't run from it without abandoning the Legion. So we confront it. Haltran's voice hardened. Confront how? You tried a snare at the cathedral, and it failed. You tried to resist the sphere, and it looked into you. Now it's inside our hull. Vey met his gaze. Then we meet it where it lives. He ordered the bridge sealed and descended into the ship's core. An ancient chamber of machinery older than the Heresy, where the cruiser's hidden data vaults interlocked with its engines. Cables hung like roots from the ceiling, dripping faint sparks. The air smelled of scorched metal and something faintly sweet, like overripe fruit. Here the seed's pulse was strongest, thrumming through the deck like a low chant. Seric raised her auspex. Signal originates here, she said. But it's not localized. It's... She broke off, frowning. It's as if the ship itself is thinking. Haltran glanced at Vey. It's learning us. Then we teach it, Vey said. He stepped into the chamber's center and drew the cracked dagger. Its glow returned, faint but insistent, resonating with the pulse around them. This is our key, he murmured. Not just a weapon, an interface. Seric's eyes widened. You're going to connect it? Yes. Lord, Haltran said sharply, last time you touched it, it rifled through your memories. This time, it could overwrite you. Vey turned his head slightly, visor catching the dagger's pale light. If I'm already overwritten, then better to know. He knelt and pressed the dagger into a recessed port at the core's heart. The blade slid in as if the metal were liquid, runes along the walls flaring. A wave of harmonics rose, filling the chamber, layered voices speaking in tones just shy of comprehension. The lights dimmed. The pulse matched Vey's heart. He closed his eyes and let the signal flow. Images surged behind his lids, the emissary's cloak unfolding, the sphere collapsing into a point, the Hydra with one missing head. Then new images, cells of the Alpha Legion scattered across the stars, each flickering like a node in a vast web. Threads of light linked them, pulsing with information. He saw the seed reaching out along those threads, not as an invader, but as a question. Show us your face, it whispered. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Instead, he projected thought, layered with every mask he had ever worn. Commander, agent, ghost, child of a Primarch. The signal coiled around him, tasting each identity, testing its strength. He felt it pause at the emptiest layer, the one beneath all masks, and realized with a jolt that he had never truly looked at it himself. Haltran's voice cut through the harmonics. Lord, your vitals are spiking. Pull back. Seric reached for the dagger, but a flare of light pushed her back. Vey stood unmoving, eyes closed, body trembling as if balancing on a blade. In the signal, he heard echoes of Haltran's youth, Seric's doubts, the Legion's collective fears, all refracted into one question. Do you choose to be pattern or echo? He drew a breath, then another. Pattern, he whispered. The harmonics shifted, not softer but deeper, like a tide changing direction. Threads of light reconfigured, coiling outward instead of inward. He felt them pass through him and into the ship, weaving into systems but leaving something behind, a residue of intent that was his, not theirs. The dagger vibrated once, then stilled. Lights brightened. The pulse slowed. Seric rushed forward, scanning. Energy levels stabilizing. Whatever you did, it's different. Halton caught Vay's arm as he swayed. Talk to me, Lord. Vay opened his eyes. They burned with exhaustion, but were clear. I showed it a pattern, he said. Not a secret, a choice. What kind of choice? Halton asked. That we will not be erased, Vay said. Not by their mirror, not by our own. He withdrew the dagger from the port. Its crack had closed, leaving a faint scar. The glow remained but steady, no longer pulsing with alien rhythm. It's listening, he murmured, but now it listens to us. Seric checked her auspex again. Signals still present in the ship, but changed. It's harmonizing, not overriding. Haltran exhaled slowly. So we've tamed it? No, Vay said. We've entered its game. They left the core and returned to the bridge. The hololith now showed the sector in sharp clarity. Legion cells highlighted, not as prey, but as nodes of a living network. Vay saw how the seed had mapped them, and how he had, in turn, imprinted his own intent on the map. He realized he could send a single pulse, and every cell would feel it, not as an order, but as a possibility. A whisper of unity, not built on deception. Haltran watched him warily. This is power, he said, but power changes those who wield it. Vay glanced at him. So does secrecy. Seric spoke softly. Where does this lead, Lord? He looked at the map, the spiral now uncoiling into a line stretching toward unknown stars. To the place where patterns end, he said, and where we decide if the Legion survives as shadow or becomes something else. The bridge was silent except for the faint hum of the new signal. Crew members moved with wary purpose, no longer blank-eyed, but not entirely themselves. Vay felt their attention on him, not worship, but waiting. He placed the dagger on the console. We chart a new course, he said. Not to flee, not to trap, but to meet what waits. Haltran's eyes narrowed. And if what waits is stronger than us? Vay allowed a faint smile. Then we learn how strong we are. He keyed a command. The cruiser's engines engaged, turning from the dead system toward the uncharted void indicated by the line of the new map. Stars shifted across the viewport, light stretching like threads of fate. For the first time in years, Vay felt not like a puppeteer or a ghost, but like a man stepping into an undiscovered room. In the quiet, he heard the signal humming under the hull, a note neither threat nor promise, but invitation. He placed his palm flat against the console, feeling the vibration travel up his arm. Masks within masks, he whispered, but perhaps a pattern can be more than a mask. No one answered. Only the ship moved, gliding into darkness toward a horizon where secrets and echoes might meet, and where Mercan Vay would have to decide if he was still a commander of shadows, or the first architect of something new. The cruiser moved like a needle through black cloth, leaving no wake but the subtle hum of the new signal threading its hull. In the bridge's dim light, Mercan Vay watched the hololith redraw itself over and over, spirals uncoiling, lines bending toward uncharted points. The pattern he had imprinted on the seed now pulsed faintly across every deck, a quiet rhythm beneath footfalls and machinery. He had hoped for clarity. Instead, he felt suspended in a moment between inhalation and exhalation, unsure whether he had tamed the mirror or only taught it a more convincing mask. Haltran stood at the sensor pit, eyes shadowed. Reports from the outer decks, he said. Crew are changing, not visibly, but their routines have synchronized without orders. They finish each other's tasks before instructions are given. Serik looked up from her auspex. They're linked by the signal, she said softly, like cells of a single organism. Vey's hands tightened on the console. An organism we built, he murmured, or one that built us. Haltran glanced at him. And what does that make you, Lord? Heart or parasite? Vey did not answer. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled in slow arcs. The map's uncharted line stretched ahead like a promise or a threat. He had chosen this course, yet felt like a passenger. He called for a status report from the lower decks. The reply came in unison, dozens of voices overlapping on the Vox. All systems stable, awaiting pattern. The hair at the back of his neck rose. He cut the channel, the echo lingering like a scent. Serik shifted uneasily. They don't even say orders anymore, she said. They say pattern. It's only a word, Vey replied. Haltran's jaw clenched. Words shaped thought. Vey stood, cloak whispering. Then we show them a thought worth shaping. He left the bridge and descended toward the ship's core, Haltran and Serik following. The corridors were unnaturally quiet, crew moving with smooth precision, eyes distant yet intent. No one saluted. No one spoke. Vey felt like a ghost moving through a dream of his own making. In a side passage, he glimpsed a technician tracing a Hydra sigil into the dust with absent fingers. But one head of the sigil was missing. The space left blank, as if waiting. At the core chamber, the hum was stronger. A low heartbeat vibrating the deck. The dagger lay on its pedestal, glow steady, crack sealed into a faint scar. Runes along the walls pulsed with synchronized light, breathing with the crew's silent rhythm. Serik scanned the room. Signal amplitude rising, she reported. It's spreading to long-range Vox frequencies. Haltran stared at the dagger. It's not just our crew, he said. It's reaching our scattered cells. Vey approached the pedestal slowly. They were scattered, he said. Now they're threads in a web. And you hold the center, Haltran said darkly. Do I? Vey asked. But the question was more to himself than to Haltran. He placed a hand on the dagger. The hum rose, harmonics brushing against his mind. For a heartbeat, he felt the presence of distant operatives, faces he had never seen, names he had only encoded. They flickered through him like images in a broken mirror. Each carried doubt, hunger, and a whisper of his own intent. He had wanted to unite them without revealing himself. Now unity had arrived, but he could not tell whether it was his design or the seed's. He withdrew his hand and turned to his operatives. Prepare a test, he said. We send a pulse to one cell. A thought, not an order. See if they echo it back. Serik hesitated. What kind of thought? A choice, Vey said. One word, freedom. Haltran's brows drew together. You'll show them the way out of the web? I'll show them the option, Vey said. We'll see if the mirror reflects choice or only pattern. Serik keyed the sequence. A soft chime marked the transmission. They waited. The hum of the chamber deepened, then steadied. The Vox crackled and a single voice spoke. Not the cell's operative, but something larger, layered with multiple tones. Freedom acknowledged. Pattern remains. Haltran cursed under his breath. It swallowed them. Not yet, Vey said, though his stomach felt hollow. It's acknowledging. That means it heard. Serik looked up from the console. Lord, more signals incoming. Not ours. External ships approaching. Imperial patrols. They've traced a ghost transmission to us. Vey exhaled slowly. Then the mirror reflects more than we thought. On the bridge, The hololith showed new contacts flickering at the system's edge. Imperial warships, smaller but numerous, forming a net. Their transponders blinked with inquisitorial codes. The Legion's cruiser had slipped in under a merchant guise, but the signal's spread had betrayed them. Halton's voice was taut. Orders? Vey stared at the map. He had spent decades weaving deceptions to avoid direct battle. Now the choice loomed stark, fight or flee, but either would feed the mirror. He felt the dagger's hum in his palm, a silent question. Pattern or echo? He spoke without raising his voice. We do not fight. We do not flee. We disappear. Seric frowned. How? Through them, Vey said. He activated the dagger. Its glow flared, harmonics spilling through the ship. Crew members paused in their work as if listening to a distant sound. The new signal spread outward like ripples from a stone dropped in black water. On the hololith, the approaching Imperial ships flickered, their formation shifting subtly, data streams corrupted by invisible threads. For a heartbeat, Vey saw through their sensors, felt their captain's confusion like distant thoughts. We show them a different pattern, he murmured. We become it. Haltrin's eyes widened. You're hijacking them. Not hijacking, Vey said. Inviting. Seric's hands flew over the controls. Energy spikes across all decks. If you push too far. I'm not pushing, Vey said. I'm opening. The cruiser's hull shimmered as stealth fields deepened beyond design. To the Imperials, the ship became a ghostly echo, then a distortion, then nothing. Their net closed on empty space. Vey felt their bewilderment slip through the signal, a taste of their fear. He almost pitied them. Haltrin exhaled, half a laugh, half a groan. We're gone, he said. No, Vey replied quietly. We're elsewhere. He cut the signal, the dagger's glow fading to a steady pulse. The hololith showed only empty stars. The Imperial ships milled at the system's edge, hunting shadows. The cruiser drifted in a pocket of silence beyond their reach. Seric looked at him with something like awe and dread. You've turned the mirror outward, she said. For now, Vey said. He placed the dagger back on the pedestal. But every reflection leaves a trace. We cannot stay like this forever. Haltrin stared at him. What are we becoming, Lord? Vey met his eyes. What we always were. A question. He left the core and walked back toward the bridge. Crew members moved aside silently, their traceries of light fading slowly from under their skin as the signal dampened. Yet they still moved in uncanny synchrony, like dancers following unheard music. Vey felt both pride and unease, pride that the Legion could still adapt, unease that adaptation might be erasing them. In his private chamber, he activated the Primarch's recording once more. The flickering figure spoke. Never show them all your faces. Vey shut it off before it finished. He whispered to the empty room, and if I have none left? Outside the viewport, the dead system's pale corona receded. Ahead lay darkness uncharted, but now Vey felt its pull less like fate and more like choice. He had opened the mirror, seen his Legion reflected as a network of masks, and for a moment glimpsed what might lie beyond masks. Whether that was freedom or another pattern, he did not know. He sat in silence, listening to the ship's hum, feeling it answer his heartbeat. Somewhere in the vastness, his scattered cells would be feeling the same pulse, waiting for a thought to shape it. He had sent them the word freedom. They had acknowledged. Pattern remained. The next move would show whether the Legion still belonged to him, or whether he had become only the first echo of something new. The cruiser drifted in a pocket of silence beyond the Imperial's reach, a ghost threading uncharted darkness. For the first time since leaving the dead system, the hololith showed no pursuit. Only a field of cold stars and the faint glimmer of the path Vey had imprinted upon the seed. Yet the stillness was not peace. It was a breath held too long. Merkin Vey stood at the bridge's viewport and felt the weight of it pressing inward. A hush full of questions. Haltran approached, visor down, movements clipped. "Outer deck secure," he reported. "But the crew is different. They anticipate orders before I give them. Some finish tasks before they're assigned. No mistakes, no hesitation." "Efficiency," Vey murmured. "Or possession," Haltran said. Serek entered, auspex flickering in her hands. "Signal persists," she said. "Muted now, harmonized, but it's growing denser, like a weave tightening." Vey turned to them, and the cells. "Echoing the same pulse," she said. "Some have begun transmitting without prompting. They're building patterns between themselves." Haltran's jaw tightened. "Patterns you didn't design." "Patterns we inspired," Vey said softly. He stepped to the hololith. It displayed not sectors or fleets, but a network of nodes, each a cell of the Legion pulsing with faint light. Threads connected them, weaving new constellations. For years, Vey had dreamed of a Legion united without revealing its center. Now that dream stood before him, but it felt less like achievement and more like inevitability. He keyed a command. A pulse flickered across the network, a thought wrapped in code. "Choice," he whispered. "Freedom." The nodes glimmered, then steadied. No answer. Pattern remained. Haltran moved closer, lowering his voice. "Lord, you're losing them." "I never had them," Vey replied. "I only held the masks. Then what's left?" "Perhaps a face," Vey said, though his tone held no certainty. He left the bridge and descended into the ship's core. The corridors were hushed, crew moving with uncanny coordination, traceries of light still faint under their skin. Some turned their heads as he passed, eyes glinting with a calm he could not read. Serek and Haltran followed without speaking. Vey felt the ship's hum deepen around him, like a tide pulling at his bones. At the core chamber, the dagger lay on its pedestal, glow steady. The runes along the walls pulsed in rhythm with the crew's footfalls above, a heartbeat binding metal and flesh. Vey approached it slowly. "This began as a weapon," he murmured. "Then a mirror. Now a conduit." Serek scanned the readings. "Energy stable," she said, "but it's no longer just broadcasting. It's waiting." "For what?" Haltran asked. "For us," Vey said. He reached for the dagger. Its glow flared, harmonics brushing his mind. Images surged, cells across the galaxy weaving their own networks, faces of operatives he had never met sharing thoughts beyond his reach. A hydra with one missing head. Then a new image, a point of darkness in the map, deeper than void, like an eye opening. Serek's auspex beeped sharply. "A destination," she said. "Coordinates forming at the network's center." Haltran swore. "It's summoning us." "Or we're summoning it," Vey said quietly. He withdrew his hand. "Set course," he ordered. "But cloak our trajectory." Haltran stared at him. "You're going to follow it?" "Yes. This isn't adaptation," Haltran said. "It's surrender." Vey met his gaze. "It's understanding." Serek hesitated. "Lord, if this is a trap..." "Then we see what waits," Vey said. "We can't build a pattern by staying still." The cruiser's engines engaged, gliding them toward the new coordinates. Stars slid past like slow sparks. In his private chamber, Vey sat alone, dagger on the table before him. He activated the Primarch's recording one more time. The flickering figure appeared. "Never show them all your faces," it said. Vey shut it off before it finished. Perhaps one is enough, he whispered. He closed his eyes. Behind his lids, he saw the network of cells, their threads pulsing, forming a shape he could almost recognize. Not a hydra, not a spiral, but something rising from masks. He wondered if this was what the emissary had sought all along. Not data, not weapons, but to push the Legion past secrecy into revelation. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Seric's voice over the Vox. Approaching destination. Uncharted void. No stellar body. He rose and went to the bridge. Outside the viewport lay darkness deeper than space, a region where sensors showed nothing but the faint shimmer of gravitational distortions, like curtains over a hidden room. The crew worked in silence, their motions smooth, as if guided by a rhythm only they could hear. Haltron's voice was tense. We're at the edge of the map. Past here, nothing. Vey stepped forward. Then we draw our own. He placed a hand on the console. The dagger's glow brightened at his hip. The ship's hum deepened, threads of the signal coiling toward the dark region ahead. For a heartbeat, Vey felt the presence of something vast, not enemy, not ally, but mirror. Waiting. Seric whispered. Energy spike. It's opening. Outside the viewport, the darkness rippled, revealing a faint lattice of light like a city made of constellations inverted. Towers of nothing rose from void, each crowned with symbols shifting too fast to read. The sight made his heart stutter. He had seen many wonders, but this felt older than the galaxy, a structure built of absence. Haltron drew a sharp breath. What is that? The place where echoes gather, Vey said softly, where patterns end. The lattice pulsed. A voice slid through the Vox, layered harmonics, speaking directly into their bones. You have carried the mask far, child of secrecy. Step inside and see the face. Vey felt every mask he had ever worn tremble. And if I refuse? Then you remain pattern, the voice said, and fade. Seric's fingers hovered over the controls. Lord, Vey turned to her and Haltron. We came seeking weapons. We found a mirror. Now we find ourselves. He drew the dagger. Its glow matched the lattice outside, runes flickering like stars. Prepare the crew, he said. We go in. Haltron's face hardened. Into what? A trap, a god, a grave. Into truth, Vey said. The cruiser glided forward. Darkness folded around them, light bending like water. The lattice expanded, swallowing the ship without impact. Inside, sensors went blind. Only the hum of the signal remained, steady as a heartbeat. In the bridge's dim glow, Vey stood still, feeling the mirror close around them. He did not know if he had led his legion to rebirth or dissolution. But he knew this. Secrecy had brought them here, and only a revelation would take them further. He placed the dagger on the console. Masks within masks, he whispered. Let's see what's behind. No one answered. Only the ship moved deeper into the lattice of inverted stars, carrying its commander and crew toward the face beyond the mask. Darkness folded around the cruiser like a living tide, sealing away the known stars. Every screen on the bridge went black, except for a single line of pale light tracing the dagger's outline where it rested on the console. The crew moved without hesitation, hands gliding over dead controls as though guided by another sense. Merc and Vey stood at the viewport, visor dimmed to catch any flicker, but there was only a shifting void, lightless towers and invisible bridges woven of absence. The lattice of inverted stars pulsed faintly, echoing the rhythm of his own hearts. Haltron broke the silence. Sensors blind, engines responding but not under our input. We're drifting inside something. Seric's auspex displayed static. This region isn't vacuum, she murmured. It's structured, like moving through a body. Then we're already in his throat, Haltran muttered. Vey did not answer. He felt the hum of the signal resonating with the dagger at his side. It was not hostile, not yet. More like a hand pressed against a mirror, waiting. Keep the crew steady, he said softly. No sudden moves. They descended from the bridge into the ship's lower decks. Crew stood in ordered clusters, eyes half closed, mouths whispering syllables too faint to decipher. Thin traceries of light ran under their skin like veins carrying luminous blood. Serek scanned one crewman. The readings scrolled in shapes she did not recognize. They're attuning, she whispered, becoming part of a larger equation. Haltran's grip on his weapon tightened. They look like worshippers. Vey paused before them. He saw no fear in their faces, only calm expectancy. He felt the temptation to speak, to direct, but sensed that any order would ripple through the pattern like a thrown stone. Instead, he passed in silence, Haltran and Serek following, deeper into the ship where the hum grew louder. At the core chamber, the runes on the walls glowed with soft, liquid light, flowing from one to another like a script being rewritten. The pedestal that held the dagger pulsed faintly, even though the blade was on Vey's hip. This is the heart now, Serek said quietly. Not engines, not command. Here. The harmonics rose, and a voice slid into their minds, layered but intimate. You have carried the mask to our threshold. Show us what you are. Vey stepped to the center. You've watched us, he said aloud. You've tasted our secrets. What do you want? To end the pattern, the voice replied. To see the face. Haltran barked a harsh laugh. We're soldiers, not supplicants. You are patterns, the voice said. Masks that have worn themselves thin. Serek's eyes darted to Vey. Lord, it's trying to draw you in again. I know, Vey murmured. He drew the dagger. Its glow brightened, matching the runes. You built this, he said to the voice. Or we did. Either way, it's ours. The harmonics deepened. Then step forward and claim it. Vey closed his eyes. He felt Haltran's hand on his arm, restraining, but he shook it off. Stay here, he said. No matter what you see. He walked to the pedestal. The runes rose like soft waves under his boots. When he placed the dagger upon it, the chamber's light shifted, dissolving walls into a horizonless expanse. He stood not in metal, but on a plane of dark glass, reflecting infinite constellations. In each constellation, he saw moments from his legion's history, raids, infiltrations, betrayals, replaying as points of light. The Hydra symbol floated before him, its missing head a void pulling at his gaze. The voice whispered inside the plane. Mask or face? Choose. He saw his own reflection multiply across the glass. Commander, spy, child, soldier, ghost. Each image wore a different expression. Defiance, doubt, weariness, hunger. He realized these were not illusions but truths he had hidden even from himself. He reached for one, and it shattered into sparks. Haltran's voice echoed faintly, distant. Lord, your vitals. Vey spoke into the void. I am not your pattern, he said. I am not your echo. Then show us, the voice murmured. He took a breath and let the masks fall in his mind. Missions, code names, calculated lies. Beneath them, he found not certainty, but a single impulse. To matter. To build something that would not be forgotten. He let that impulse rise like a signal. The plane trembled. Constellations shifted, threads of light weaving around him. The Hydra's missing head, filled with new stars, not one image, but many interlinked, faces of operatives across the galaxy, each shining with choice. The voice shivered. "You show us freedom." "Yes," Vey said. "Not as command, as option." The threads pulsed outward, touching the farthest nodes of the Legion. He felt their minds brush his, hesitant but alive, tasting the idea of freedom without mask. Some recoiled, some reached. It was no longer his control. It was a seed of possibility. The plane brightened, constellations unraveling. "Pattern altered," the voice said, softer now. Face glimpsed. Vey opened his eyes. He was back in the core chamber. The runes on the walls dimmed to a steady glow. The dagger lay in his hand, its light subdued but warm, no crack visible. Haltrin and Serek stood where he had left them, eyes wide. "What happened?" Haltrin demanded. "I showed it a choice," Vey said hoarsely. "Now the Legion must decide." Serek scanned the room. Signal changed again. "It's not binding the crew. It's listening." Vey sheathed the dagger. "Good. Let it listen." He stepped past them, feeling exhaustion drag at his limbs, but a strange clarity in his mind. The crew in the corridors no longer moved like worshippers. Some blinked as if waking from a dream, others still quiet, but no longer synchronized. Light faded from under their skin. Whispers replaced silence. On the bridge, the hololith displayed a network still pulsing, but now threads branched outward unpredictably, like roots seeking new soil. Vey watched it shift, neither under his control nor the emissaries, a living pattern growing beyond masks. Haltrin stood beside him. "You've broken the mirror," he said. "No," Vey said quietly. "I've given it another face." Serek looked up. "What now?" Vey stared at the network. "Now we wait. They will choose." "And if they choose against you?" Haltrin asked. "Then I've done what I came for," Vey said. "I've given them the chance I never had." He turned to the viewport. Outside, the lattice of inverted stars still surrounded them, pulsing faintly. But now an opening appeared ahead, a corridor of darkness leading back to the galaxy. The voice whispered once more, almost gentle. "Mask are shed, face glimpsed. You may depart." Vey inclined his head slightly. "Thank you," he murmured, though he did not know if he spoke to the emissary, the seed, or himself. The cruiser moved forward. Stars returned, first as faint pinpricks, then as full constellations. They had crossed the lattice. Sensors flickered back to life. The crew stirred, murmuring, exchanging uncertain glances. Some smiled faintly, as though remembering who they were. Others kept their silence, perhaps still weighing the new pattern within them. Haltrin released a long breath. "We're back." "Back is a mask," Vey said softly. "But it's a start." He placed the dagger on the console. Its glow was steady, neither weapon nor mirror, but something waiting. He felt its pulse match his own heartbeat. The Legion was no longer entirely his, but perhaps that was freedom too. Outside the viewport, the galaxy stretched vast and indifferent, yet Vey saw it differently now. Not as a field of operations, but as a web of possibilities. He whispered to the stars, masks within masks, and maybe, beyond them, a face worth wearing. No one answered. Only the ship moved, bearing its commander and crew out of darkness. Each step forward, another choice. The cruiser drifted in silence, the lattice now behind them, but its echoes lingered in the hull like faint scars. Merc and Vey moved through the corridors, observing the crew. They were no longer synchronized in the unnatural precision he had first noted, yet subtle changes persisted. A flicker of light beneath a sleeve, a head turning in anticipation, a half-formed thought carried across the ship. He sensed the seed's influence had not left but had integrated, coexisting with them. It was a living network now, not of commands, but of possibilities. Haltran followed quietly, eyes sweeping over every compartment. "They're different," he said. "Some act on instinct, some pause before each step. The old chain of orders is gone." Vey nodded, hands clasped behind his back. "Not gone. Evolved. We are entering a space where adaptation replaces obedience." Sarek trailed them, Auspex scanning silently. "Signals still present," she reported softly. "It's harmonized with our crew, not controlling them, responding." "Listening," Vey said, "not dictating." They reached the core chamber. The dagger rested on its pedestal, faintly glowing. Its pulse was slow, steady, and unlike before, not demanding attention but offering it. Vey approached, feeling the hum underfoot, a rhythm intertwined with the ship itself. It was no longer alien. It was shared, a resonance of intention. Sarek scanned the dagger and surrounding runes. "It's stabilizing," she said. "The seed has embedded, but it's learning restraint." Halton frowned. "Learning restraint? Or waiting?" "Both," Vey said. "And we must act carefully. The moment to push is also the moment to fail." He turned to them. "We have reached a point of choice. The seed has mapped us, the lattice has tested us, and our legion's cells have received the pulse. What remains is not to command, but to observe." Haltran's gaze narrowed. "To observe? You want to wait while the pattern spreads?" "No," Vey said. "We guide it, but subtly. The smallest thought can ripple into vast consequences." Outside the viewport, the stars moved slowly, distant and indifferent. Vey felt the weight of every mission he had ever plotted, every deception enacted, fold into this moment. The emissary, the cathedral, the lattice, they had all led to this point, an alignment of shadow and choice. He thought of the Primarch's recorded voice, "Never show them all your faces." Yet now he wondered if the true lesson was to show one face at a time and let the pattern reveal the rest. He keyed a console. The hololith pulsed and mapped the sector. Legion cells blinked as nodes along a spiral, now responding independently. Threads of light connected them, diverging and converging, some forming arcs toward uncharted coordinates. The map was alive, shifting, evolving, not following him, but existing with him. "Every cell is an echo," Vey said softly, "and echoes can multiply." Sarek's eyes narrowed. "Then we risk them moving beyond us." "Then we risk nothing by doing nothing," he said. "But doing nothing is not the same as surrender." Haltran shook his head. "You speak in riddles, Lord, but I see the truth in it. We've given them freedom, but at what cost?" Vey's hand hovered over the dagger. "The cost is always present. What matters is the choice. The seed does not impose. It offers reflection." He activated a sequence on the console. A soft pulse ran from the dagger through the ship's conduits. The crew moved in response, but not as puppets. They hesitated, considered, acted. Each step was a decision. Vey felt their minds brushing against his, fragments of thought intertwined with his own, faint echoes that respected rather than obeyed. Sarek studied the readouts. The lattice, the seed, the dagger. They're not separate anymore. They're converging. A single network. "Then we are not alone," Halton said, awe lacing his voice. Vey shook his head slightly. "We never were. We've only just realized it." He turned toward the viewport. Stars rolled past in silent arcs, constellations unchanged, yet perceived differently. Somewhere out there, his scattered cells pulsed with the same rhythm, each echoing the freedom he had sent. They were learning, choosing, reflecting. And in that reflection lay a question. Could a legion survive its own liberation? Seric spoke softly. Lord, what if they choose wrong? Then they learn, Vey said. Choice is never without consequence, even for us. A low hum reverberated through the deck, subtle but persistent. Vey felt it through his feet, through his gauntlet, through the pulse of his hearts. The dagger's glow matched it, slow and steady. The seed had embedded, yet it listened rather than dictated. He realized that the mirror had become a network, not of control, but of shared intent. They had survived the lattice, the cathedral, the emissary's test, and emerged with a new order. Haltrin stepped closer. And what of the Imperium? The Inquisition traced us this far. Vey's gaze did not leave the viewport. They will continue to chase ghosts. We are shadows of our own making. Let them follow echoes. Seric's voice was quiet. And the dagger? It is no longer a weapon, Vey said. It is a conduit, a choice. The bridge's hololith shifted, highlighting each cell's pulse. The threads intertwined like roots, not ordered but alive. Some flickered, some brightened, some split into new arcs. Vey felt a strange satisfaction. Not control, not domination, but coordination through choice. The Legion had survived without being bound, and perhaps they would thrive in ways he could not predict. Haltrin exhaled slowly. So we've changed them, freed them. Vey's lips curved slightly. Freed them, for now. Freedom is a question, not an answer. Seric studied the dagger and its pedestal. And us? Are we changed? Vey looked at her and Haltrin. We have adapted. But adaptation carries a weight. The mirror has reflected our choices. We will carry those reflections with us, and so will they. He returned the dagger to the pedestal. Its glow dimmed, steady but alive. Outside, stars wheeled in endless arcs. The ship moved silently through the void, carrying the Legion and its network of echoes into unknown regions. Each pulse, each choice, each cell's action contributed to a new pattern, one that was theirs but also beyond them. Haltrin's voice broke the quiet. And if the seed grows too large, then it will test us again, Vey said, and we will meet it. That is all we can do. The cruiser sailed onward, past uncharted coordinates, past the lattice, past shadows of stars long dead. In the bridge's dim glow, Vey stood at the viewport, hands resting lightly on the console, heart steady. The dagger pulsed faintly at the pedestal, a slow rhythm matching the crew's own. Outside, the galaxy stretched vast and indifferent, yet inside, the Legion pulsed with new life, threads of choice running through every cell. Vey whispered softly to no one. Masks within masks, and now, perhaps, a face to show. No one answered. Only the cruiser moved, bearing commander and crew, a network alive with freedom, into the darkness of uncharted space. The cruiser drifted into uncharted darkness. The galaxy around it folded into a horizonless void. Stars no longer glimmered as points of reference, but as scattered shards of memory, fragments of worlds lost or never born. Merkin Vey stood at the viewport, hands resting lightly on the console. The dagger pulsed faintly at its pedestal, a heartbeat intertwined with the ship's own. The lattice, the seed, the network of Legion cells, all had converged into a single rhythm, and now the question remained. What would emerge from it? Haltrin approached silently. Lord, he said, voice taut, we are approaching the coordinates generated by the network. The signal is strongest here. Whatever awaits us. Vey turned slowly. We'll test more than our strength, he finished for him. It will test our choices, our loyalty, and the measure of who we are beneath every mask. Seric stepped forward, auspex in hand. Readings fluctuate wildly, not just energy, but thought. The network anticipates us before we act. Every pulse, every breath, every decision echoes in its field. Then we do not move blindly, Vey said. He closed his eyes for a moment. We step into the mirror deliberately, and we choose which reflection to follow. Haltran's eyes narrowed. And if we confront the emissary, or whatever built the lattice, we face annihilation. Perhaps, Vey said, but annihilation reveals truth. Patterns alone cannot teach it. They descended into the lower decks, the crew moving as one, yet apart, each step measured. Lights dimmed as they approached the core chamber. The dagger glowed faintly, resonating with the network and the pulse of the ship. The runes along the walls throbbed, coiling outward in soft spirals, and the air vibrated with low harmonics, layered and discordant. Vey felt the pulse through his gauntlets, through his hearts, and even through the marrow of his bones. It was not threatening. It was observing. The chamber shifted as they entered. Walls dissolved into darkness punctuated by faint, luminous constellations, as if the room itself had become a fragment of the lattice. The pedestal floated at the center, dagger balanced atop it. Threads of light radiating outward. Vey understood instantly. This was not a place but a state, a convergence of thought, choice, and pattern. The network had pulled itself to a focal point. The emissary's presence, however literal or symbolic, was here. A voice emerged, harmonics layered, familiar yet alien. You have carried the mask to its limit. Now show us the face. Vey stepped forward, blade in hand. We do not show it as obedience. We show it as choice. Choice, the voice echoed, or surrender. He closed his eyes. He visualized the faces of his scattered cells, Legion operatives he had trained in secrecy. He felt them, tentative, receptive, each a thread in the network he had begun. He imagined the lattice responding, shifting around them, not binding but reflecting. His own reflection appeared among them, mask after mask dissolving into something singular, intent. Haltran's voice was low, almost a whisper. Lord, you're risking yourself. Vey opened his eyes, the dagger glowing steady. Risk is inherent in all truth, he said. I am not here to dominate. I'm here to reveal. The harmonics rose, and the chamber expanded into infinite space. Stars spun around them, each point a memory, a mission, a betrayal. Vey saw the emissary, or its echo, emerge within the light, cloak folding and unfolding, symbols shifting with every heartbeat. The figure spoke directly into his mind. Mask shed, face shown. Will you step forward, Merkin Vey, or remain pattern? He breathed steadily. The reflection of his own faces shimmered across the chamber. Child, soldier, spy, commander, ghost, all simultaneous and distinct. He reached for one, the one he trusted least, and let it dissolve. The lattice pulsed in response. Then he reached for another and another, until only a singular presence remained, himself, unmasked yet whole. I step forward, he said aloud, voice firm. The figure inclined its shifting form, then witnessed the consequence. Threads of light extended from the dagger into the lattice, radiating outward. He felt the network of Legion cells pulse in resonance. Choices were being reflected back at him, not as commands, but as possibility. Some reached for freedom, some recoiled. The lattice adapted, not with hostility but recognition. Each pulse confirmed not control but coexistence. Seric whispered, "It's accepting you." Haltrin's hand went to his weapon, then relaxed, or testing us further. Vey looked beyond them. The lattice of inverted stars, the infinite void surrounding the ship, the mirrored pulse of the dagger, it all aligned. This was a crucible of intent, an arena for loyalty, deception, and choice. He understood that the network, the emissary, and even the dagger had not sought obedience but revelation. They were being asked what it meant to lead without domination. The chamber pulsed, the harmonics rising, almost imperceptibly. The emissary's voice, layered and distant, whispered, "Your legion has become mirror and echo. Will you guide it or watch it fracture?" Vey placed the dagger firmly on the pedestal, glow steady, threads of light converging. "We guide it," he said, "but not by order, by example, by intent." Seric scanned the lattice. Energy signature stabilizing, network coherent, cells responding individually, not as puppets. Haltrin exhaled. "You've changed the game." "Perhaps," Vey said softly. "But the game was never mine, only the choice within it." The figure inclined once more, harmonics folding into silence. Then step away and watch the Legion's reflection. Face shone, pattern shifted. Vey stepped back. The chamber contracted, walls reforming into solid stone, light steady and familiar. Outside the viewport, stars returned as normal points of reference. The dagger's glow dimmed, but remained alive. The crew moved with subtle autonomy, no longer synchronized but not erratic. Each action was considered, a thread in the web he had helped form. Seric lowered her auspex. "It's different now. They're awake." Haltrin's gaze softened. "And we survived." Vey nodded. "Survived, yes, but not unchanged. The mirror shows both freedom and responsibility. The Legion is no longer just shadows. They are choices, and so are we." He looked at the dagger, feeling its pulse sync with his own heartbeat. Outside, the galaxy stretched infinite, indifferent. Yet for the first time, Vey saw it as a place of possibilities, threads waiting for action, faces beyond masks waiting to emerge. He whispered softly to himself, masks within masks, and finally, a face to guide them. No one answered. Only the cruiser hummed, carrying its commander, his operatives, and the Legion's threads into the uncharted void, each pulse a testament to choice, reflection, and the weight of freedom. The cruiser moved silently through uncharted darkness, stars refracted into shards of light along its hull. Merkin Vey stood at the bridge, hands lightly resting on the console. Outside, the void seemed endless, yet every pulse of the dagger at its pedestal resonated like a heartbeat within the ship, linking crew and network, seed and shadow, choice and echo. He had stepped into the lattice, revealed the face beneath the masks, and the Legion had responded, not as puppets, not as machines, but as threads woven into a living pattern. Haltrin's voice broke the silence. "Lord, what now? The network is coherent, the cells responsive. The lattice, even the emissary's voice is gone. We've passed the test. Or have we?" Vey did not answer immediately. He observed the hololith, showing Legion cells pulsing like stars in a new constellation, threads branching outward with autonomy. "We have passed the reflection," he said softly. "But the test was never theirs alone. It was ours, to confront ourselves, to choose what we become." Seric approached, auspex humming faintly. "The dagger's pulse is steady. It is no longer influencing directly, only resonating. The crew acts independently but in harmony with the network. The mirror is silent now." "Silent, yes," Vey murmured, "but aware, conscious, and watching." Haltrin ran a hand through his hair. "We've changed them. We've changed ourselves. and yet the Imperium is still out there, tracing the signal, probing the void. Vey's gaze did not waver. Let them come. The mirror has taught the Legion to adapt. Every cell is now a node of reflection, capable of action and choice. They cannot be crushed by fleets, because their unity is no longer commanded. It is understood. Seric glanced at the dagger. And the seed? Will it remain dormant, or has it awakened something larger? Vey stepped closer to the pedestal, fingers brushing the blade. Its glow was steady, soft, like a heart at rest. The seed is not dormant. It is integrated. It listens, yes, but it does not dictate. It coexists, and so must we. The cruiser drifted further into the void. No star guided them. No gravitational pull constrained them. The only direction was the path they would choose. Vey turned to Haltran and Seric. Prepare the Legion. Every cell, every operative, every thread. They will be tested again soon. The Imperium may pursue us, and the lattice beyond may have other agents. But now we have a choice. Collective, conscious, deliberate. Halton's jaw tightened. Choice. That is what we've given them, and ourselves. Vey inclined his head. Yes, and now we observe consequences. The bridge grew quiet except for the ship's hum. Vey allowed himself a moment to consider the consequences. He had carried the Legion through shadows, into lattices, into mirrors of intent. He had revealed a face beneath the masks, and yet, in that revelation, he felt a hollow, like the echo of his own choices reverberating back. How many cells would embrace freedom? How many would recoil? How many would act against him, despite his intent? Seric's voice drew him back. Lord, sensors detect an external fluctuation, a pulse from the uncharted void ahead. Not hostile, not recognizable as any known fleet or vessel. It's patterned. Vey's fingers rested lightly on the console. Then it has noticed us. Haltran swallowed. Not noticed. Interacting. Responding. Yes, Vey said. The lattice beyond the lattice. Another mirror. Or another face. The hololith flickered. Points of light formed a constellation, threads intertwining with the Legion's own network. They are communicating, Seric whispered. Not as enemies, not as allies, as something else. Vey stepped back, observing. He felt the hum of the dagger through the deck, the pulse in his own heart, and the resonance of every Legion cell. Then we answer, he said. Haltran's eyes widened. Answer? How? By choice, Vey said. Not by command, not by deception, but by demonstration. The Legion acts not because we order it, but because it understands the pattern. And we must demonstrate the highest pattern, unity with intent. Seric nodded slowly. Then the next step is ours. Vey turned toward the viewport. Outside the cruiser, the void stretched infinite, indifferent, yet alive with subtle currents, a lattice beyond comprehension. Each pulse echoed through the ship's hull, a rhythm in sync with the dagger, the network, and the crew. He realized the mirror's lesson had been not only to reflect, but to challenge, to force the Legion to recognize itself as choice and responsibility intertwined. He stepped forward. We will guide them, yes, but not control them. They must see their own reflection, understand it, and act. Every decision from now on will be their own, yet aligned with our intent. That is leadership in this moment. Haltran exhaled slowly. And if they fail, then we adapt again, Vey said softly. That is what survival means. The mirror is patient, but so are we. The ship drifted forward. The external pulse grew, forming patterns that aligned subtly with the Legion's network. Threads of light reached outward from the cruiser, brushing distant nodes, some familiar, some not. Vey felt the pull of the unknown, a horizon that was not defined by stars but by choice. He looked at the dagger, steady and waiting. "We have entered the crucible," he said. "We have revealed the face beneath the mask. The Legion is awake. Now we must see what they choose." Seric's hands hovered over the controls. "Observation only." "Yes," Vey said. "We witness, we learn, and we act only when the choice is clear." Haltrin shook his head slightly. "You've changed the rules entirely. No command, only demonstration. No obedience, only reflection." "Exactly," Vey said. "And in reflection lies the truth of us. Not masks, not patterns, not echoes, but the face." The hololith pulsed, mapping threads of the network interacting with unknown points beyond the cruiser. Vey felt the resonance through his body, the pulse in the dagger matching his heart's. Every crew member moved with subtle awareness, each a node in the living pattern. Outside, the void remained indifferent. Yet inside, the cruiser pulsed with consciousness, the Legion's choices radiating outward. Vey whispered softly, masks within masks, faces revealed, and now the test begins. No one answered. Only the ship moved, carrying commander and crew, threads of choice and freedom interwoven into the uncharted depths where reflection would meet consequence and where the fate of the Legion, and perhaps the galaxy, would be decided. The cruiser glided through uncharted void, no stars marking its passage, only the faint shimmer of distant nebulae as a pale reflection of forgotten suns. Inside, the dagger pulsed steadily on its pedestal, threads of light entwined with the ship, the crew, and the network of Legion cells. Mercan Vey stood at the viewport, hands resting lightly on the console, eyes tracing the endless darkness. The lattice beyond the cruiser had revealed itself fully, a network of pulses, echoes, and reflections stretching toward unknown points in space. The moment of decision had arrived. Haltrin stood beside him, expression taut. "Lord, we are approaching the central point, the convergence of the lattice. Whatever awaits us, it is inevitable." Vey nodded slowly. "Yes, I can feel it. Not as threat, not as enemy, but as consequence. All threads lead here. The choices we made, the faces we revealed, the freedom we offered, they converge in this crucible." Seric adjusted the auspex. "The external pulses are cohering. It's as if the lattice is aligning with our network, forming a single pattern. And yet, it is not ours, not entirely." Vey's fingers brushed the console, feeling the hum of the dagger resonate through the ship. "We do not need it to be ours. We only need to exist within it, to witness, to act when clarity appears." Haltrin's eyes narrowed. "And if clarity is destruction, then we endure," Vey said. "As always." The cruiser entered the convergence point. The void beyond the viewport shifted. Constellations twisted and reformed, towers of faint light coalescing into structures that defied geometry and gravity. Threads of pulse from the dagger intertwined with the lattice outside, each echoing choice and intent. Vey felt the collective awareness of the Legion, every operative across the stars resonating with the network, stretching the threads outward. The mirror had become a living system, one that reflected, responded, and now waited. Seric whispered, "The energy signature is immense. It's watching." Vey stepped toward the pedestal. The dagger glowed stronger, harmonics brushing against his mind. He felt the faces of his Legion reflected in the lattice. Choice, freedom, hesitation, courage. He realized the lattice was not a trap but a test, not of obedience, but of revelation. Every cell would now decide whether to act as part of a collective pattern or diverge into independent threads, and the moment of divergence would be definitive. A voice emerged, layered and resonant, threading through the lattice and the ship alike. Face shown, mask shed. Will you step fully into the reflection, Merkin Vey, or remain shadow? Vey placed both hands on the dagger, feeling its pulse synchronize with his heart's. I step, he whispered, not as commander, not as mask, but as choice. The chamber around him dissolved. Stars, threads, and reflections coalesced into infinite planes, each representing a potential path for the Legion. Vey saw echoes of his past decisions, the cathedral, the dead system, the network of cells, and now every outcome, every possibility unfolded before him. He realized he had not only guided the Legion, he had become part of the reflection itself, a node of intent intertwined with the lattice. Haltran and Seric followed, their forms stabilizing alongside him in the infinite planes. What happens now? Haltran asked, voice strained. We observe, Vey said, not to command, but to witness. The dagger pulsed, sending waves through the lattice. Legion cells responded, threads diverging into independent paths, yet maintaining coherence. Some reached toward freedom, some recoiled at uncertainty, others explored new strategies unforeseen. They saw their choices ripple outward, interacting with the external lattice. The emissary, or its echo, emerged as a presence, not hostile but observing, waiting for the consequences of liberty and intent to unfold. Seric's voice trembled. Lord, some cells are diverging violently, conflicts emerging. Vey nodded. Freedom requires friction. Choice requires challenge. We do not intervene. We observe and learn. The lattice shimmered, responding to the collective consciousness. Patterns twisted, new paths appeared, and the faces of his Legion operated independently, yet resonated with shared purpose. Vey understood that the mirror had become a network of reflection, not domination. The Legion was no longer shadows obeying him. They were threads of intent, capable of independent action while connected to the whole. Haltran stepped closer. And the Imperium? If they trace us, find us. Vey turned his gaze to the infinite planes. They may follow shadows, but shadows no longer belong to us alone. They exist now in choice, in pattern, in freedom. If they pursue ghosts, not us. Seric lowered her auspex. It is stable. The dagger harmonized with the lattice. The network is coherent. The Legion is alive. Yes, Vey said softly. Alive as pattern and as choice. Alive beyond command. He stepped forward, feeling the pulse of the dagger align with his heart's. This is the culmination, he whispered. Not of control, but of reflection. Not of obedience, but of freedom. The Legion will act, learn, and adapt, and we will witness, not dictate. Outside, the infinite planes shimmered, stars folding into threads of light, constellations forming new geometries. The lattice pulsed in harmony with the cruiser, the dagger, and the Legion. Vey understood that the test was complete, not with victory or defeat, but with awareness and choice. Haltran's voice broke the silence. And us, we remain the same. No, Vey said. We have been reflected. Our masks have been shed. We act now as nodes of observation and guidance, not domination. The dagger glowed steadily, threads of pulse weaving through the ship and into the lattice. Vey stepped back from the pedestal. We return not as masters, but as witnesses. Every choice from here is theirs to make. Every path theirs to follow. We endure with them. Seric exhaled softly. It's beautiful, terrifying. Indeed, Vey said. Choice is always terrifying. Outside the viewport, the lattice expanded, threads interconnecting with distant nodes, some familiar, some unknown. The Legion's cells pulsed with light and intent, reflections and echoes moving independently, yet resonating in unison. Vey saw the future unfolding not as a map of orders, but as a web of possibilities, each path defined by choice and awareness. Halcyon placed a hand on Vey's shoulder. We've done it. They are free. Free, Vey echoed. And so are we. Freedom is both gift and burden. The mirror shows everything, yet demands nothing. We endure, we observe, and we act when clarity appears. He looked at the dagger, pulse steady, and whispered, masks within masks, faces revealed, and now the Legion is awake. The cruiser sailed onward, the lattice expanding around it, carrying commander and crew, threads of choice interwoven, into the uncharted void. Stars glimmered faintly, constellations unknown and infinite, yet within them shone the reflections of a Legion transformed, not as shadows, but as architects of their own destiny. Vey placed his hand lightly on the console, feeling the pulse of the dagger, the network, and the crew. We have survived, changed, and endured. The cost of choice is always clarity. The reward is freedom, and the Legion will carry both. No one answered. Only the cruiser hummed, moving through darkness, carrying its commander, the Legion, and the network into a future defined by reflection, choice, and the unending weight of consequence.